Sonic Boom, Robots from the Sky. Amy says there's a great turnout for the hero's charity car wash for the awful daycare center, which somehow just consists of a cage with one baby in it. I was just thinking it was great that the heroes were doing something heroic that was relatable instead of them just fighting robots. And then they had a forced joke. But yeah, we should see the Sonic characters doing charity a lot more often to really drive home that they're heroes. Because the show needs to do something to compensate for the fact that they're not freedom fighters trying to overthrow a tyrant. And so most of the time they just goof off by themselves. Then Eggman shows up wasting a bunch of time calling Sonic a thief because of the charity, and finally tells his robots to attack. Then we see some unrelated robots leave a crashed aircraft, with the big red one asking the second for a status report. And I was disappointed and underwhelmed at seeing that the show skipped past the fight scene. Oh good, we still see 4 robots getting destroyed. I assumed the show had skipped the entire action scene, because most of the time that's how uninterested it is in action. Some of the good robots we see think that the heroes are evil for destroying robots like them. So the red guy sends an extended arm at Sonic, and Eggman awkwardly takes credit for building them, and they somehow don't correct him right away. He sends a missile at Sonic, and he slips and falls as tense music plays, getting me pumped and invested. We see the heroes get tied up, and Eggman eagerly celebrates in a charismatic way. Then he's John is happy enough to leave because he knows the heroes tend to turn things around. But you'd think he'd really be smart if he shot them to death. How the fuck did Sonic get them all to escape from the ropes? His super speed doesn't make sense. The red guy is annoyed at Eggman and his base for calling his robots his, and he quickly changes the subject, instead of just saying that he made them, and so they're his in the sense that your son is yours. And is told about how these robots came from a utopia robot society where nobody argues about politics. That wouldn't happen. Eggman thinks it's awesome that there's an entire society of robots in the sky with no overlord, because he wants to rule over them. Why would he think there's no overlord? What society would be able to function without a government? It's so fascinating and engaging to see this creative concept for the episode. Like there's good robots who don't know Sonic's the good guy. Tails goes to investigate the crashed UFO and wastes time before saying that the GPS history reveals it came from the sky. Eggman calls Orbot and Cubot digital dunces for giving him some drink he doesn't want. And naturally, the good robots walk away in a huff because he treats them badly. He at first tries to look like he's friends with them in a vitriolic way by telling Orbot and Cubot to insult him back, but stupidly threatens to dismantle Cubot the minute he calls him ugly, missing the point of his plan. So after the good robots get prevented from leaving, Orbot and Cubot surprisingly succeed in taking off after they're told to by the good robots, and they go talk to the heroes, with Amy immediately assuming they're gonna rat out Eggman again. So the heroes smash through the wall in Eggman's base, and Eggman wonders if he should just give them a key already, rather than just making a better wall. I love seeing that the robots have a force field Amy and Six have some trouble with, not that it mattered. I mean, if they had the force fields on, they wouldn't be able to attack through it. They could always make the force fields really hot, so that force field itself is dangerous. It was also entertaining to see Knuckles swing around and throw a robot. Amy and Six avoid some lasers in a tense scene as tense music plays. Then Orbot and Cubot waste time pretending they're surprised the heroes are here, and Tails presses some buttons, and deactivates the password-protected magnets holding the good robots prisoner because his password sucked. So then the good robots magnetize Eggman, and one of them electrocutes Eggman and makes him scream in an uncomfortable way. I'm not sure whether to be proud of the heroes for not lecturing the good robots for electrocuting a bad guy, or be annoyed that just another way they're not heroic enough because they don't even care. That's out of character considering Amy lectured Sonic for throwing Eggman against a boulder. They're lucky his electricity wasn't strong enough to kill him, since it was only meant to be used against robots. And then there's a bunch of time being wasted on the good robots boringly making peace with the heroes, because the good robots just assumed that because Eggman's mean to his robots, they're the good guys. Out of nowhere, some lasers start shooting at the heroes, and Tails gets knocked out for a few seconds. And after some impressive drama, he wakes up just fine. And he's not gonna have to go to the hospital after this, so this was entirely pointless. Just a cheat. The show didn't have the guts to have him dead and get him revived with time travel like I assumed. It turns out the fake Cubots are the ones threatening them with ray guns. And Sonic plans on corralling them without hurting them, So he accidentally presses the self-destruct button on their heads, and Tails reveals that he can just put them back together after they do that to all of them. So that's not without hurting them, Sonic. But anyways, Tails wants to run tests on them to see what got them all worked up. It was humanizing, if cringy, to see Eggman being shirtless in a bathtub. And Orbot and Cubot are washing him, as they talk about what you'd expect. So why is Eggman wearing a hat over his hair? That defeats the purpose of having a bath. Anyways, Orbot and Cubot suddenly get taken over and walk away instead of killing Eggman like you'd expect of taken over robots. They had the perfect opportunity to drown him. I guess the person who brainwashed them had standards, or didn't know they were right next to Eggman. Tails reveals that Cubots were taken over by malware, the same kind that crashed the UFO earlier. This is an intriguing action plot. Why can't every episode be like this? Amy had a realistic scream when she was threatened by a robot and her call cut out, just after she tried to talk tough. Sonic and Tails leave the house, and the Cubots immediately break past the door and get out, and the turtle asks to keep them inside takes off anyways because it's not his problem. To be fair, what was he supposed to do? I'd do the same thing. The townspeople panic about some robots, with the news reporter commenting on it, and the old lady lampshades that he's not helping her get her purse away from the robot, and instead just reporting. Gee, it sure is lucky no robots are bothering him, and there's only one there. Sonic lampshades that Cubot and Orbot are threatening him in a mecha, and Orbot says he doesn't work for Eggman anymore, and they get out of the mecha and laugh evilly. Tails sends some fire extinguisher stuff at the fire spraying robot to defeat it. The mayor says to the heroes that they need to save his town since it's where 20% of his campaign funds come from. Wait, wouldn't it be 100%? I guess he's running for president then. And Tails says out of nowhere they knows which town the malware is coming from, so they need to go there to stop it. He says he downloaded the GPS coordinates from his time in Bolt's spaceship. But why would the malware contain that info? Why would he be able to download the GPS coordinates from a UFO that wouldn't be in contact with Mobius's satellite because Mobius's people don't know about the robot society? And why is Tails deciding that only he and Tails will head to Morristown? I get wanting some of the heroes back home to protect it from any more robots that might show up. But why does he have to leave so many of them behind? Well, this is better anyways. Leave all the comedy characters behind. After Sonic chats about Peanuts since they're in a plane together, they fly away from the spaceships piloted by robots because they're shooting lasers at them, and Tails makes one of them catch on fire, which forces one of the robots to get out of it. Tails cockily asks if Sonic wants to pay this guy a visit, and he says he'd love to drop in, trying too hard to be badass, and he drops into the spaceship to defeat it. Somehow, when he falls into the plane, he isn't injured or killed from the fall, and he wishes he had a bag of peanuts. It's good that they're playing dramatic music here. Tails shoots a laser at the spaceship to force the robot pilot to eject, and Tails stops the plane because if there's more sentries, his plane has no chance of making it to the town. Sonic briefly panics because Tails is being irresponsible and reckless by taking off for a new plan, but then he completely changes personalities and says happily to wait for him. So which personality do they want for him? The worried, protective big brother from the pilot, or the reckless thrill seeker? Normally he has both no problem. A giant robot threatens the girls, who hide behind something wooden, and after Amy hopes Sonic's fighting well right now, we see him safe in a spaceship behind Tails and uses a massage function on the chair briefly. Tails starts flying in the spaceship, which is a brilliant idea since how would the robots know that they're not one of them? The spaceship starts automatically bringing them towards the robot utopia. I wonder if it'll be revealed to not be such a perfect society. Why is Tails so sad briefly before they land? Well, it turns out that after they land, some dramatic music plays, and Tails then downplays the drama by saying this place looks more depressing than Comedy Chimp's routine after his wife left him. Some robot guards shoot lasers at them for them to dodge, and Tails says they're innocent civilians, so they have to hold back. Sonic wishes he could just destroy them, naturally, and they run away and then go into a slide, which leads them to some more robots, which threaten them with guns just to be told to stand down. Bolt stands up for Sonic, saying he's his ally, and Bolt's friend says he's been stressed out since he was made leader of the robot resistance. It turns out the malware signal came from the new government they're rebelling against. The robots tell the heroes where they need to go next and give them a map, saying a leader of the bad guys is there. And we see some robots threatening normal people as dramatic music plays. This is what we need to see with badniks most of the time. Not them being beaten in one attack. Some of them even surround some cops. And Knuckles briefly fights them, and then some civilians run away from them screaming. It was cool to see an ugly green guy saying he'll be passing fists and start fighting robots. How did he fight them better than the main heroes? All Amy and Six have done for the most part is hide like cowards. Why is Amy being so useless? She needed Knuckles to save her while she just standed still in an earlier episode. She needed Knuckles to save her because she got grabbed by a robot. And now this. She seems more incompetent in Season 2. After Tails says he'll never get to their leader's stronghold, they get approached by guards who want to take them straight to him. That convenience makes sense. Somehow the leader recognizes them. And it turns out this is Hypnobot. Tails made him, and it turns out he was the robot Tails put in a robot fighting tournament, and he was defeated by the Poodle robot. So after he waited for Tails to save him, and never got that, some convenient aliens out of nowhere found and repaired him, and he wants revenge against Tails as a result. This is the definition of a continuity error. Obviously, this isn't how it happened in the original episode. Tails says sorry, and Hypnobot says sarcastically that he should stop his world domination plans just because of that. Well, at least it was sarcasm, because that'd be an anticlimactic end. He briefly makes the robot sarcastically laugh, and Tails lampshades they shouldn't be taking out on people other than him. The heroes defend the robots, with Amy saying they can't do this all by themselves. So Knuckles has to make an inspiring speech to inspire the civilians to fight the robots instead of cowering. So they do. I like that even Tails' girlfriend attacked a robot. And Comedy Chimp sends some water at one from a flower, so that must be really high pressure water, or it's not waterproof somehow. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails take off and get surrounded by robots again. And Sonic says they need to take out Hypnobot. Tails flies towards him holding something, and he hesitates because he doesn't want to hurt his creation. Something gets sent at him, so he spins it and drops it, and after Sonic is knocked to the ground, Tails' tails get tied together and it ends up hanging from a ledge. So Sonic has to be the one to kick Hypnobot off the Utopia, and Sonic grabs Tails. Then a robot tries to attack Sonic in that precarious situation, which is great for the tension. But since Hypnobot got destroyed, after suddenly becoming evil, all the evil robots turn off. And predictably, the civilians refuse to clean up the mess and return the town to its former glory. Then the good robots like Bolt save Tails with their extendable limbs. And we see Eggman eating some cereal. He's happy because Orbot and Cuba are coming back, and he says he knew they didn't want to miss Crazy Hat Day, which he apparently just now came up with. Well, that was amusing. And we see some robot use duct tape on Sonic. Tails is sympathetic even more because he lampshades that everything was his fault. Then we see Eggman in his underwater Eggmobile planning to do something evil, so what took him so long? And Amy calls up Sonic. She's briefly mistaken for his girlfriend, and the robot teases Sonic, accusing him of being whipped, which actually he is. She's constantly bickering with him and insulting him. And then it turns out Eggman has fixed up Hypnobot. I'm really surprised that he could have even been fixed. Eggman reveals that he found him in a lake and repaired him, and Hypnobot bonded with him over the resentment of Tails. Why did the guy who made Hypnobot have a low evil voice do that? I don't understand. It does make sense that he'd resent Tails for not coming back to save him. He's reminding me of the Fiona infiltrator from Archie, and how she might resent Tails if she was repaired, and how Fiona resented Sonic for not rescuing her. It's irrational, but still realistic. Amy and Six decide that Sonic needs reinforcements after seeing a bunch of B-robots, and Bolt's friend reveals that there's a committee in charge of making all of the buildings look the same way. That's evil. It's unrealistic that anyone would approve of that. Then Hypnobot shows up to invade the robot town with Eggman and his robots' help. So Hypnobot tries to shoot lasers at the heroes who get surrounded by robots. Why the hell is Sonic staying still like an idiot? Why isn't he immediately homie attacking or spin dashing through all of them? Sonic says he's so happy Amy's here, and awkwardly says it's not in a romantic way, wasting my time. And it was cool to see Six jump on and run up to the top of a big machine, but then she just gets grabbed by a bug mecha and caught by Knuckles, so whatever. The girls are really getting the shaft in this episode. The green robot ties up a big robot and then gets damaged by a laser, and it was sweet that Bolt attacks the guy for revenge. So not only is he entertaining by talking like a battle-experienced soldier, but he cares about his friend. The heroes run through some hallways and hide to avoid the robots going after them, and go down a slide, reaching the robots' secret base. Six relatably lampshades that it was a disaster since they had to retreat, and is impressed by their freedom-fighting bunker. I love her right here. The green robot plans on making robot duplicates of the heroes with their DNA in it so they can stop the bad guys. This is creative, and I can understand why Six would see the ick factor in it. Team Sonic is such an arrogant name. I'm glad Amy lampshades it. And why the hell do the robot duplicates have creepy blue corneas? They wouldn't like that idea. I like that Six compliments the robot her for having the same personality as her, agreeing with her that she didn't like the idea of herself. She says that she's got spunk. Wait, so how the hell are the robot heroes immune to their hypno waves? Well, I guess they have really good antivirus. Knuckles the robot runs around to spin a giant robot around and defeat it, and Six the robot grows a staff from her hand and attacks the robot. So what's the point? How is that different? An actual conspiracy theorist wouldn't refer to themselves as having paranoid diatribes and conspiracy theories. If they had that kind of self-awareness, they wouldn't be paranoid conspiracy theorists anymore. Some more dramatic music plays as the heroes work together with their robot counterparts to gradually defeat the robots bit by bit. There was some tension because Sonic got hurt and needed Tails to fly in to save him. A flying detached fist and some lasers get fired. And Tails does a bunch of kicks at Hypnobot, defeating him so that the fist flying at Sonic can magically stop in its momentum instead of continuing and hitting him. It's great that Tails was the one who saved the day, since the robot was his creation and he's overcoming his hesitation from earlier. The new name of the city is Robotkin. Well, at least now it's got the word Robo in the title, but it's still stupid and forgettable. They missed the prime opportunity to call it Robotropolis. This is why I don't care about the show's fan service. It has fan service for everyone but fans like me. And the Robot 6 was pretty genre savvy when she said that the reason the robot heroes can't come home with them is because they might get corrupted by a virus and turn against them. That is actually something Eggman could do feasibly, so she's not just paranoid, she's being smart. This was a pretty awesome episode. It was captivating right away that the heroes get targeted by good robots from an entire society of good robots, who naturally think Sonic's evil for fighting robots like them. I have to question how nobody discovered the civilization of robots in the sky until now though. But this world has TVs, don't tell me it hasn't invented airplanes. Oh yeah, and Tails mentions GPS a couple times too, so GPS should have caught the city. But I guess it makes sense that maybe the world does know about the robot city, but the heroes have no reason to have heard of it or research other countries than their own, when they're always wrapped up in their own town. So Eggman convinces Bolt and his friend to fight Sonic for him, taking advantage of the interesting misunderstanding. I guess Bolt's society is totally cut off from the outside world and uninterested in researching it, like a kid in Paulus, since they somehow don't know Eggman's evil and what his situation is. I love that Bolt has extendable arms and can send a flying fist out. And that he talks like a soldier experienced with battle, talking like a tough guy. And that he's protective of his friend, proving he does care about him, and that's why they bother hanging out together. And it was interesting that their robot utopia really isn't always a horrible place that was just lying about being a utopia, because that was the obvious twist. Sure, when the heroes finally go there with a stolen robot spaceship, they do discover it's not a good place. But that's because it was just taken over in a coup. Most of the time it's a harmless place. I can only assume it was the ancients who built the ancestors of these Robians so that the city could even exist in the first place, because I don't know the history of this place. So Eggman's robots get taken over by malware from Hypnobot that causes them to attack the heroes of town, but not Eggman, because I guess Hypnobot sides with him for being Tails' enemy. It does make sense that a robot with the ability to brainwash in any way would end up evil. That's a power that's begging to be abused. And it does make sense that he'd resent Tails for not fixing him after that robot tournament got him destroyed. I was proud of the show for having continuity there, I really was. I never thought I'd see that robot again, because it was destroyed. The problem is, it always felt forced that he was the bad guy in this episode. First off, the whole premise rests on a plot hole created by the fact that Hypnobot wasn't referenced again after his debut episode. I always assumed that since he didn't repair him, because fuck using him against Eggman, Tails had just used him for spare parts to make new inventions. He certainly would have neglected him to find him again after he was somehow sent to space, which I don't remember being the case. I remember a Poodle robot destroying him, and him staying on the ground. A local scouting vessel from the robot city found him and saved him, somehow. And that's the second thing that's forced. The fact that he just conveniently got saved and turned into a completely different robot by some unrelated party we never knew before. Couldn't this just be a brand new villain instead of Hypnobot? Why did the city even bother with scouting vessels if it's so isolated that it doesn't know Eggman's evil? This just immediately made me think, it's so obvious that this wasn't always the plan with this character. So Hypnobot was made into a talking robot who could resent Tails because of the robots who were nice enough to repair him. I just have to wonder how Hypnobot could have blamed Tails for not knowing where the hell he was. It's the Fiona situation all over again. He didn't know where to even start looking for him, since apparently he was sent into space and wasn't just in pieces in the ground after being destroyed at ground level. Although, to be fair, if Tails really cared about Hypnobot, he'd have put a tracking device in him, but it could have gotten blown up anyways by the thing that defeated it in that episode. So either way, it wasn't Tails' fault, and while I sympathize with Tails for feeling guilty and apologizing to him, like the show got him perfectly here, you'd think Sonic would have stood up for him and explained why Hypnobot was being unreasonable for being mad at Tails for not knowing where he was. All he'd have to say is, he didn't know where you were. How could he have possibly come fix you? When Tails apologized to him, I was immediately reminded of that episode of Fairly Odd Parents where the bad guy stops his evil plan because Timmy apologized to him for the whole thing that made him turn to villainy in the first place. He was so shocked at the main character feeling guilty and apologizing to him that he realized he was being too hard on him and changed his mind. But it would have been anticlimactic if Hypnobot did the same thing in stopping a villain. The show has enough anticlimaxes as it is, and I was really impressed with how epic, tense, and actiony it was being for once. The dramatic music really does a good job emphasizing the tension, and so does Sonic getting his leg injured. That was gutsy. I'm sure it'll be healed in the next episode though, so whatever. And it makes sense that Eggman would find and repair Hypnobot and get him to try to attack the robot town again. I immediately liked the fact that there was a freedom fighting resistance group in the episode. An unintentional sad AM reference, and full of robots for irony's sake. And for the sake of the heroes having an edge in the final fight, they got robot duplicates of themselves made. I assumed that the robot duplicates would be sent into the internet to fight the bad guys, doing something only robotic programs could do. I assumed only they would be fighting them. But instead the heroes fought alongside them anyways. So they're just extra help. They did all the same things the heroes could do, so that felt kind of pointless. I refuse to believe they would have been made to have creepy blue eyes that make you assume they were bad guys on sight. Otherwise, they look a lot like the heroes, but not enough that they could be made to frame them for evil things as genuine robot infiltrators. I mean, unless someone didn't see their eyes and just saw them from the side or back. Tails finally overcomes his hesitation in the middle of a climactic fight scene and defeats Hypnobot with a bunch of kicks. And not just by sending it falling to where Eggman would be able to repair him again. And he has to be able to kick with super strength, and without his foot getting injured from kicking metal. Because that's the only way him being able to damage any robot by merely kicking it would make sense. I was actually finding it confusing that he won so easily. It would have made more sense for him to beat the robot with a wrench than by merely kicking it, like it's made out of the flimsiest metal ever. The point is, this was a fantastic episode of the show. It had a focus on tension-filled action, which is what Sonic does best, rather than forced comedy padding out the episode. Though there was some of that, there were a few times where my time was wasted by boring failed jokes by the characters, like Eggman. His appearances in the episode where he wasn't being active felt like they were just there because he's the main character, though I appreciate whenever he's being humanized for a change. And I was proud of the show for not only having continuity by bringing back a robot Tails made, but also making Tails react to his resentment in a sympathetic way that's completely in character for him, rather than just being made like a generic bratty hero. At least Hypnobot did have a response to his apology, instead of acting like he never apologized, which would have been really stupid. Ever since the malware thing happened, I was wondering if the villain behind it all would be another one-dimensional bad guy who's evil for no reason, making the fact that he's not Eggman pointless because even Eggman's a deeper character. But instead, the episode kinda impressed me because Hypnobot does have a reason for being evil, even if it was forced. This is definitely better than the Eggman's video game episode later, because I'm not saying that most of the plot events were forced to happen the way they did. And instead, most of the episode made sense, except for Tails being able to find out where the malware was coming from the way he did. That made no sense. Him getting to the robot city because he hijacked a robot spaceship and it automatically brought him there did make sense though. I felt like Orbot and Cubot being made to fight Sonic was wasted as a concept though, because you'd expect them to have a much longer battle with Sonic than that. And they just laughed when they left the mecha instead of being annoyed, making his victory seem not cathartic. It should have been more epic and tense than it was, having the inactive robot sidekicks actually being active for a change. But this was the best they could do without having the lovable robots get blown apart by Sonic's spin dash like Scratch and Grounder, which will be harder for me to watch because I'm actually attached to these little guys. Well, you get used to seeing the SSS squad get trashed. So apart from uploading their CPUs to a giant robot looking nothing like their old bodies to actually be attached to, so that you'd be fine with seeing them get damaged by Sonic, there was nothing they could do other than have them generically attack in a mecha. But it should have lasted longer. You'd expect that to be a major part of the episode, because they're part of the main cast. But instead, they were just as much of a presence as all of the other robots attacking the town. I loved that the civilians rose up and fought them, although I hated how overly long and dragged out Knuckles' rousing speech was. Even if he was being useful and epic for once. He was being the way he should be most of the time, being taken seriously. Episodes like this always make me wonder why the whole show isn't like this. Because when it does try, it works really, really well. So why does it have to focus on failing to make me laugh and boring me all episode, when it could clearly do better? It doesn't suck at this kind of thing. So why isn't it always like this instead of having bad jokes? I'm not saying every episode should be as much of an epic story arc as this, because it diminished the impact of the epic story arcs. But they should at least be a little less epic, but still epic because it's supposed to be an action series. We're supposed to have stories that are mostly about tension with the villains, and then us being intrigued, wondering how the plot's gonna turn out. And I'm glad there are still a few lighthearted moments to balance things and keep the charm there.